Learn the most advanced recruiting techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with Rick Girard.
Today we're talking about career wounds. So if your company is not operating at a 90% or above acceptance rate for offers, then your hiring process is majorly broken. So last week we talked about setting a proper framework to embark on successful hiring campaign. And today we're going to talk about one of the most important elements in making great hires. My name is Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show, where our purpose is to help companies solve the most difficult hiring challenges. Today we are talking again to our friend Erin Wilson, who was our guest last week. So it's Erin Wilson part 2. Erin, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rick.
Absolutely. So rather than me reading your bio, I was just going to have you tell our community a little bit about you in your own words, starting out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Well, I think it's important to note I've always been a candidate advocate. So started my career in technical recruiting, helping people find jobs in the technical industry, moved up to the Bay Area to take on the role of head of talent at a video tech company, and eventually spent some time at Yahoo working on programs and systems, all in the end, of course, affected the candidate experience. There
you go. And now you're with your co-founder of your own company.
Yeah. Took the plunge last August, quit, started a company called HirePool.io, and we're here to empower job seekers of all backgrounds. Today it's like a CRM for the job seeker, Rick.
Okay. Excellent. Now, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but so after the show last week, you and I connected back up and we had a conversation and we said, hey, let's bring you back and let's actually talk about and provide maybe some technical techniques that somebody can implement today. So we decided to tackle the importance of a career wound, which, in most terms tends to be, hey, so why are you looking for something new, right? So first let's talk about what I call a career wound, but, others might call a reason for looking or the why, right? So what is a career wound and why should somebody care?
Yeah, love the terminology. The wound is real, I think that you touched on that when we talk to job seekers, hopefully the first question all of us are asking them is, what do you want? And what do you want out of this job search? And when I think about the career wound, Rick, that's really the story behind the want. Why do you want that? How do you want it? A lot of times that comes from previous context, or in this case, the career wound.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a little deeper than the want, right? I think the wound and the want are both very interconnected and both equally as important. But, so I think in sales, they call, kind of a wound like a trigger event, right? Like you want some sort of pain point in which you can solve, right? And I think in recruiting, we don't really look at recruiting as something that, hey, look at, we can help heal something as opposed to, we've got a job we need to fill and it's kind of self-serving.
That's right, yeah. Well, and I think that speaks to the idea of putting the candidate first, or are they the patient in this analogy?
Mm-hmm.
But that's right. Digging deeper, trying to understand more than just a go forward plan or what do they want, to your point. But what was the crystallizing event in the past? What was the inflection point that brought you to here, to this conversation?
Yeah.
And is influencing where you want to go. So I agree with you. I think there are many layers there.
And I found that the challenge is getting somebody to open up about this, especially when you first start talking to them, right? So I've created, for me, kind of a specific verbiage that actually works really, really well, which is what's happening in your current role that is making you open to hearing about something potentially stronger for your career. And it's an open-ended question, but I found that a lot of people, I found that I turned into somebody's bartender at that point, right? They just start, opening up. And I don't know if that's something that you dig into or you've dug into in your practice, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the balance between it's a broad question, but there's this element of specificity, right? Because you're talking about the role, and I think when we start with what do you want, for me that being the tip of the iceberg, but similar to your question, when I start with something as simple as hey, this call's about you, and this whole process is about you and aligning what we're working on here. Let's just start with what you want.
Bam, and that's the key point here. It's about that person.
That's right, and they lead with what's important to them.
Yeah.
So you called it out. They may start that story with, let me tell you about my current manager. They might start that story with, I'm an ambitious person looking for career growth, and I've been, and I've reached a ceiling. But they're going to lead with what's important to them, and I think that's really our job as candidate advocates, more than recruiters. We're not just filling jobs; we're really guiding people in their career.
Yeah, and the candidate advocacy standpoint that you take is key, and I think that a lot of companies don't look at it from that angle. It's more about, hey, I need to fill this job. I need to get this work done.
That's right.
Otherwise, I'm going to have all kinds of problems. But then you run into a situation where companies make bad hires, and that's a whole nother episode as well, which might be Erin Wilson Part 3. So
I tell my co-founder I quit. I've got a new job called Higher Power Radio.
Why not, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? If you could come down every week for a co-host role, I'll have you in here every time. That would be awesome.
Yeah, sounds great.
So let's talk about what wounds are. To me, wounds are, you have kind of two things. You have both good wounds and bad wounds, right? Or actually, I call it cautious wounds, or sticky ones. So a good wound is something that, like, lack of career recognition or career growth, or maybe unkept promises. The work content might have changed, not gaining the technical exposure that they want. The work isn't challenging. Company failing, that's a big one. My company's going under. Restructuring or management changes, or geography. Commute is often a big thing, especially you see it up in the Bay Area quite often, right? You get somebody who lives in San Jose who's commuting up to San Francisco. That's a rough commute. And then we get
commute.
yeah, and then we have what I call cautious wounds, which are things you really need to dig deeper into. Money is always a be very cautious wound. When somebody leads out with money, now it could be somebody's underpaid in the market, but in most cases you hear a lot of, yeah, I'd be open to looking if you pay me more money. That's not really a wound. That's kind of a disqualifier more than anything else. But also, personality conflicts, you really have to dig deep on where that's coming from. Is it them, or is it the people they work with? And then one other one that I'm sorry, go ahead, Erin, you were going to chime in.
No, you're good.
Okay.
I'm riffing with you here.
Okay, cool. And then mergers and acquisitions are kind of an iffy one too, because a lot of times you end up being aligned as more of a backup plan, right? If things don't go well, then I might be able to make a move. But I think these are a few things that companies should be aware of, at least when they start deciding to move forward on a person.
Yeah, I really appreciate the landscape there, Rick, and I think, just to reiterate how important this topic is, I mean, this is the single most important factor in their thought process, right?
Yes.
In their decision-making process end to end. And for us, just remember that it's this collaborative process we have to work through. So is it a good use of our time? We have to be experts at assessing these wounds. And I think in order to do that, what I love you called out is, there are a few variables. There's the person themselves, there's the environment, and I think in your good wound scenario, there's a good person in a somewhat uncontrollable environment, right?
Yep.
And the recovery from that wound, what might be interesting to talk about is the concept of self-inflicted wounds, and this is something that you hear often. We talked about money as a leader, but how about growth? Why are you leaving? because I want to grow. And when I hear growth, man, it's, got to be quick to follow up with, what does growth mean to you? Let's talk about if you're getting that opportunity or not. And sometimes what you find, unfortunately, is that the wound is, it's not from the environment, but it's from the individual, and it's the behavior that they do or that they don't do that's creating that wound and sort of the self-fulfilling prophecy. So, I think we have to be, again, experts at it, but that's another type of wound I would certainly say is on the table.
And that's something that needs to be addressed with the candidate in the conversation. So these self-inflicted wounds, have they addressed that with management? Are they fixable, right? It is in essence not necessarily helpful to your company if you're trying to fill a role, but if a person actually can fix the issue within their own company based on a conversation with their manager, I mean, that right there is invaluable for career candidate advocacy, right?
That's right. And there's a couple potential scenarios, but in one case you help them, they solve, and they stay. They don't join your company, but the impression you've left on that person will carry into the talent community. Yeah. And this generates referral. And I think on the flip side, if you do end up hiring that person, you've done diligence of going deep on that wound and understanding, what their ability is to address their own wounds and what management in their previous environment capped out. And then when you think about, hey, how do we set up this new hire for success? What does a working relationship with their new manager look like? You have this completely new, fresh, meaningful perspective, right, on how to set that person up in their career. Yeah, definitely.
But, so people will tell you things, though, that they won't talk to their manager about, right? That I guess that would be a topic for another part 4. But, so I think just letting them know that they should discuss it with their manager and maybe helping them out could help them to get rid of that self-inflicted wound, correct?
Yeah, and it's funny, I mean, I know you said this, Rick, we make for boring radio talk because we don't argue that much. But, you had made the point that it doesn't come easily, and I think for us, we can't be surface level. It takes time for people to open up and share that wound. So if you listen first, if you put them first and listen, they oftentimes get there. What I found by the time you get to the bottom of it, it's very therapeutic for them, right? You've helped them work through something that they've never understood. Yeah. And, no expert before this point has helped them work through. So, how could they have possibly faced it or addressed it or done anything to improve the situation within their control? And just by having that sounding board, just to talk through, you can make a huge impact in someone's career. I mean, not just that search, but helping them become more self-aware, helping them understand they have the tools to solve those types of problems, which can be make or break in your career.
And bam, right there, you just said it. Have impact in their career. All right, we're going to take a quick break, Erin. When we come back, I want to talk about why companies overlook this, for one. And here we go. And we've been talking to Erin Wilson, the founder of HirePool.io, talking about career wounds. When we come back, we're going to discuss the topic and move it further.
You're listening to Hire Power with Rick Girard, giving you access to recruiting techniques that will help you hire key talent to build your company towards real success. Rick is a recruiting executive and entrepreneur who's been successfully recruiting in the aggressive Silicon Valley technology landscape for the past 2 decades. After a very successful stint at Apogee, he founded Stride Search in 2012. Based on a lean efficiency model, Stride has uniquely positioned itself as a leader in retained search for the most critical talent hires within a small organization. Whether you're a startup executive or recruiting professional, by listening to Hire Power with Rick Girard, you will walk away with skills to help you attract and hire great talent. Now back to Hire Power with Rick Girard.
Welcome back. We're talking with Erin Wilson, the founder of HirePool.io, before I had my tongue all tied up. And we're talking about the importance of career wound. And now we're going to discuss kind of moving forward, why do you think, Erin, so many companies kind of overlook this piece of the puzzle, I think, when engaging people?
Yeah, I mean, this is a hairy problem to me because there's actually a problem from a business standpoint, and there's a problem from an individual standpoint.
Sure.
Think about, recruiters in general, and I'm one of them, so I hate to lump us all together.
As am I.
Right? And the majority of us and the skills that make you good to some extent in this job speak to speed and execution and what can be, more surface level tactics.
Sure.
So I think by nature, we learn and we move on, we learn and we move on. And sometimes we have to just sit still and dig deep. But the second piece is, in the way that, talent is indoctrinated into the business, is you're here to fill jobs that suit the business's needs. And that's always been the role in the company, more than, hey, you're here to understand the external market's career desires, right? So that in the end it all works out. So, I think there's both the personal skill set we bring, but then there's just the historical nature of talent that has to change.
But but here's the thing too: if that hire does not work out, who usually gets the blame?
Oh, that's right. Well, and I think,
right.
Well, I mean, look, here's a good example. I mean, here's a good opportunity for us to build a partnership with our HR friends. Yeah. And I think that's part 5 of this radio show can be HR and recruiting, and how that's grown up. But every time we bring someone in, we haven't dug through the wound.
Be careful, we'll probably be booking this whole year, so.
Yeah. But if you feel, it's like, if you bring in an open wound, who's the paramedics? Because it's not the talent team at that point.
Yeah.
And so you're really doing everyone a disservice, from the candidate to the company intent.
Absolutely. All right, so now that we kind of have an idea of what a wound is and the importance of it, let's talk about, when do you walk away from a person that you've engaged? You have this need, you need to bring somebody on board, and it's really difficult as a recruiter to walk away from a candidate who based on what they've been giving you, that they're not going to make a move.
Yeah, that's right. And hopefully in an ideal state, the process is so thoughtful and modular that you have the opportunity, right, to make the best decision at any point in the process. But I think the 2 key areas are at the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
And then also before you go to offer, right? So you hit that on-site, right before the final on-site. Okay, you have your sense. So on the front end, just for me personally, if you're digging into reason for leaving, if you're digging into career wound, and you're doing so with tact, obviously, because it's personal.
Yeah. If
the candidate's not being transparent, and there isn't a level of reason in that conversation, I would walk away at that point. And it's not for one reason or another, we don't have transparency or trust in this dialogue.
Yeah.
And therefore, I'm not suited best to help you. I need to understand these things. But I think towards the end, and we talked a bit about strict, you're about to bring someone on site. You're about to invest, call it 8 hours of your team's time. Could be an $800 day, could be an $8,000 day, depending on the role. And then you're going to get into a series of conversations around compensation, which have other impacts.
Oh yeah. Before
you invest that time, right, I would make sure that you're touching on that career wound again, and that you're in a position to win. Win-win.
Yeah. Well, the career wound, people need to be reminded of this throughout the process. And sometimes, that piece that I was talking about earlier, where you kind of coach that candidate to go in and talk to their manager, have them do that. If they actually do that and it doesn't work out in their favor, then guess what? They've just confirmed that wound even more. So, that's a piece I think that's often overlooked too. But you mentioned trust, right? And I feel like the more that we talk as recruiters, the less we're trusted. And the more that they talk, and they're kind of, the more they trust us, right? The more we listen, the more we're trusted. So
yeah, that's right.
So then now you've got a situation where if you kind of just continue listening through the process and let people tell you what needs to happen in order for them to be open to accepting the role. Again, we mentioned it last week. Usually the money and the rest of it just kind of works itself out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, what we're talking about here can be as simple as asking questions like, hey, I understand it's a busy market. You're actively interviewing. How many other companies are you talking to?
Sure.
And it's not a crime to answer that question, right? You're
No.
asking it. But as you ask them questions and they share information, the follow-up questions taking genuine interest in their career based on that wound will oftentimes inform all of us whether or not we should move forward.
Absolutely.
It's so nice when you come to that point of collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had scenarios where, somebody's been interviewing at another company. It was like exactly what that person wanted. And, where it becomes tough is the hiring manager really wanted that person too. But you have to be able to make the call and let the hiring manager know, look, he's not going to accept our offer. He's got an offer here, which is less money, but it checks off all of his boxes of everything else that the guy is looking for. That's a tough place to be in sometimes.
Yeah, it's really hard, and I got to tell you, remind me of a quick tangent. I know we're going to run out of time. I'll be quick, but in a previous life, we had lost a candidate. I just started the company. We had I think we had hired 10 in a row, and then we had our first turn down. And I came in the next morning, and the manager, to your point, was really upset.
Yeah.
And he looked at me, and all he said was, "Erin, your job's really hard. I get it now." And, at this moment, I was like, wow, I never heard that from an engineering leader. Why do you say that? And he said, in short, I really wanted this candidate.
Yeah.
I believe he belongs here on my team. And I'm hurt. And, I invested so much emotionally. And what I realized is you do that with every single candidate that walks in the door in case we want to hire them, but we reject 99% of them.
Yep.
And I don't know how you do that. And, the funny part, I turned and said, look, Dan, this wasn't the right opportunity for him, and it wasn't the right hire for us. And lo and behold, the guy chose money over opportunity, and he was very happy over the next year where he went, and so were we, because that wasn't the type of people we hired. So I think in the end it all worked out, but that moment in time where he felt, where he could express that, I thought that was pretty special.
But you know what? I think it's rare, though, when somebody accepts money over opportunity, that it does work out that well, because I've seen it backfire probably more times than not.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and, on our agenda here, counteroffers can file into the table of contents there.
Yes, show number 7. All right, so as we're kind of wrapping up here, let's talk about how kind of understanding this will ensure a successful hire for a company. So I think without knowing wounds and wants, you're really setting your company up for counteroffers, offer shopping, forced decisions, people who don't start, fallouts. Do you see any other kind of issues with that creep up with not a thorough process on this front?
You just talk about the candidate experience. If you're talking, not listening, that job seekers pick up on that. And in today's world, that becomes market perception, and that becomes Glassdoor.
There you go. And then that becomes expensive because you have to pay Glassdoor. All right. So what does digging into this one simple thing like career wounds, what does that do for a company? What advantages does that give you as a company to successfully bring this person on board?
Yeah, I think the concept of career wound helps you understand that as a company or as a recruiter, our role in this is to help them in their career. It's not a job search wound; it's a career wound. And by putting ourselves in this position, we're actually developing empathy.
Yeah.
And so that empathy is this key benefit I would talk about. It's not something hard you see a lot of the times when you talk about hiring.
Yes.
But it's an incredibly valuable attribute both in hiring and developing people, running a business. So it's this value proposition that you can implement there, but that has exponential value over time. So I think you really develop empathy when you're putting their career and their career wound ahead of your business needs.
Yeah, and I think taking that a step further, so like allowing the company to connect the dots and also kind of position the opportunity properly for that person based on what they want out of their career.
Absolutely. Well, then you get of course, the byproducts just more tangible, right? Your onboarding is much more productive. The performance over the time, the duration of that employee tenure, we know is longer on average. So, I mean, there's really no downside to this approach.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? It shows that you care. It shows that you care too, and it does, I think, emotionally invest somebody into a company much more too. So, you know, you'll gain 100% commitment from that person you hired.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Well, you know, if they think that by helping you accomplish your goals, they're accomplishing their career goal, right? Now you've got the right incentives in place.
So very true. And we're almost out of time, but Erin, so I want to give you an opportunity. Give us like a little, a quick plug on hirepool.io for our listeners.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Rick. I mean, you know, all of this experience we've talked about and just taking the phone calls from the friends and the family and just realizing that it's been a few decades and still no one's really helping people manage their career. Only now it's more important than ever. So I think long term, we really view, you know, Hirepool as the world's career platform. That's where we want to be. Okay. And is it available for anybody to use right now? So you can go and you can hit the wait list up, but we clear that every couple days. Okay. So if you go to hirepool.io, hit the wait list, we'll have you in within 24 to 48 hours. Excellent. All right. So Erin, thanks again for your time investment in, you know, addressing this again with us, part 2 for the Hire Power community. Again, now what's the best time or best way for somebody to reach you? Yeah, I think, you know, really easy to find me on LinkedIn. It's Erin, E-R-I-N, on LinkedIn. I'm very responsive there. You can also find me on Twitter or drop an email to ew@hirepool.io. Excellent. Now, I want to thank you again for being here. Thanks to our listening audience for tuning in to this week's show. A quick thanks to our team, our engineer, Paul Roberts. He's cheering over there. Our producer, Andrea Ballin, Haley Stern, Shanti Ryle, and our executive producer, Kim Iverson. To listen to this and any past episodes, check out our website at hirepowerradio.com or check us out on iTunes, Hire Power Radio. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook. That's Rick, R-I-C-K, Girard, G-I-R-A-R-D, or at Rick_Girard. So thank you for tuning in. Tune in next week as our guest will be the legendary author and recruiting trainer Lou Adler. We're going to discuss really drilling into the power of networking for referral sources of talent. Thanks for listening again. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and you have been listening to the Hire Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Hire Power with Rick Girard on OC Talk Radio.
It's time for brand